Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio this morning. We have a lot going on, a lot to talk about. First, we're going to start with a comment from a viewer that we received actually early this morning. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. I no longer have any doubt about Nikki Haley because she is showing me what she and by the company she keeps and what donors we the people, will need to satisfy. She almost has the same arrogant confidence that Hillary had, like she knows the fix is in and she will be the one hope. While I have my own election concerns, and they are many, we need to vote in numbers so huge it will be impossible to deny, in my opinion. Thank you for that comment. If you're new to the program, you see the number on the bottom of your screen. You can always reach out to me there, leave a voicemail or leave a text message. That is the easiest way to do it. The big story of the day, the Supreme Court could toss Trump eligibility dispute to Congress. This is what everybody's talking about. Oral arguments begin today in the Supreme Court. I see that New York, as a matter of fact, is still pushing, and maybe we'll get to that a little bit later, still pushing to take Trump off the ballot. This is going to be interesting. It's going to set up quite a showdown. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that, but I think you'll see a lot of coverage of it. Not a lot of information right yet, so not much else to pass on to you. Our guest is here, so I'm going to take our first break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in the studio this morning, we have our brand new Steuben County public health educator. First of all, congratulations on the job.
Thank you so much.
This is exciting. Tell us what, because I'll be honest, I'm a little ignorant on this. Tell us what the job entails.
So as public health educator, I'm responsible for a variety of things, but some of those things include all of the department's messaging. So
Okay.
I run our social media, I do press releases and do kind of all of that information, administrative stuff for the department.
To spread the word.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's very much like a public relations role then.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. How long have you been interested in this? Were you more of a public relations person, or you wanted to tie it in with public health?
I went to school for public health,
Okay.
but I did have, I have a Bachelor of Arts, so my emphasis was on health education in
Okay.
school, so this role fit very
Perfect.
well into what I had prepared for my career. But I am very much enjoying that public relation-esque feel to the role. That is what public health education is, in my opinion,
course.
that connection and constant communication and being kind of an expert in information dissemination.
Just out of pure curiosity, is it getting more away from like sending out press releases and more to social media, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, most of my work is through social media,
Okay.
is through monitoring any questions or comments that we get either via email or people call the office looking for health information. I'm your gal for that.
Well, so what are some of the questions that people would ask? Because I wouldn't think to seek out a public health educator on something.
Yeah, COVID is still a big topic.
Oh,
We
of
get a
course,
lot
yeah.
of questions, especially with the changes in testing requirements and things of that nature. We get a lot of lead calls, so either myself or our nurse Kat will answer calls about that. And just if people are having questions about general health, they're looking for a service or a program, I certainly try my best to route them in the right direction.
When you mentioned that this is your background, this is what you went to school for, your resume is impressive. I'll say it. You don't have to brag yourself up, but it's very impressive. And you have been a fellow. And for someone like me, that's maybe an intern, if people aren't aware, but the official term's fellow. What has surprised you the most when you were a fellow, when you first took over this job?
So majority of my public health work through my undergrad and just through work in general had been in more urban areas. I went to school in Rochester, so most of our work was focused in that kind of demographic. So I guess what surprised me was just the nuances that come with doing public health in a more small town, rural area, but I am really enjoying it so far. There's different aspects of it that you don't really get to touch on when you're working with more urban communities.
Is it a lot different then? Or, I mean, you pretty much already kind of knew what the job was going to entail.
I pretty much knew,
Yeah.
but as everything, there's little
Yeah.
things, bits and pieces here and there that you learn about and try to refine your skills based on the communities that you're serving.
And when I read about your background and some of the things that you're looking forward to in this job, one thing I was surprised, and it makes 100% sense now that I've thought of it, but that broadband actually fits under healthcare now.
Yeah. So now that telehealth is becoming a huge thing, a lot of people either are implementing it or people really want to use it in areas that maybe don't get the best internet access or
Right.
don't have access at all. The question comes up as, is this really an equitable source of healthcare if we can't reach
Everyone.
everyone?
Yeah.
And there's a large amount of people, especially in this community, that might not have the best broadband access that they could have. So that's definitely an up and coming
Yeah.
issue that needs to be addressed.
Well, I know that that's really became a hot topic during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Because you had kids that maybe didn't have access to computers or to broadband that needed to still go to school online. So now I never thought of it from the telehealth aspect too, but it should be at least available to everyone, whether or not they choose to use it.
Yeah, and even with schools, with public health, we're focused on addressing the social determinants of health, which are basically all of the factors in someone's life that is not directly health related but impacts your health. So as you mentioned, schooling, being able to go to school, get your education, increase the literacy, things of that nature, that does impact people's health. So broadband access across the board is really important, I think, for public health to address, even if it's not directly correlated to health.
Well, and that's a great segue into my next question. So where do you see, having done this for a little while now, and now officially the Steuben County Public Health Educator, where do you see our needs in Steuben County today? Like, what are the main focuses?
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about transportation and access to care. We, as everyone probably
Yeah.
knows, we're a very broad county. So figuring out ways to reach those people that might have a more difficult time getting to primary care appointments, and then broadband access, like we just mentioned,
Sure.
reaching out through telehealth if they're unable to come in. I would love to see our MCH, so Mothers and Children's Health, be increased a little bit and see more people using services. And then just overall health literacy and health education. I wouldn't say it's lacking in the county, but I am a really big supporter of people being health literate and making their own health decisions, having those critical conversations. So I would love to contribute to that in my role.
And how do you further those goals? I mean, you've highlighted the problems, perhaps problems is a strong word, but you've highlighted some things that you want to see. How do you further that goal?
In terms of transportation, I'm hoping that we are continuing to advocate for funding to get transportation services to those that need it. Again, advocate for funding and kind of that infrastructure to build broadband
Sure.
access. And then in terms of MCH, just advocating, advertising our services or our partner services, so moms or
Right.
parents in the area that need them know that they're there. I think that's the first step, is people knowing things are available.
Right.
And with health literacy, just making sure, I know for my role, holding myself accountable, that I create health messaging that is in plain language that is understood by most people. And if I happen to make a post or make a release that people don't understand, correct myself and go back and make sure people are understanding the information that I'm putting out there.
And you do have a unique role, because I was thinking of how little I knew when I was reading up on this. And so you have kind of an exciting role in a way to spread the word on what you can do and what people, the access that people can have to some of the services.
Yeah, I really enjoy being that kind of voice for the different programs and services, but then also for what people want and need out of a public health department, out of healthcare services.
Sure.
And I do take a lot of pride, and I feel a great sense of responsibility in being the person that is disseminating this information.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but where can people follow this messaging?
yeah, so you can follow our Facebook page, Steuben Public Health. We have Instagram. Feel free to reach out to us on our company email that's publichealth@steubencountyny.gov, or give our office a call. We're happy to talk to you and help you out with anything health-related or public health-related that they're looking for.
Well, congratulations again and best of luck. Thanks for doing this.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I want to thank our guests. We have one other quick interview that we'll have later on in the program. Just as a reminder, it's one that we played in the past, but just to remind you that the Valentine's fundraising dinner for Guthrie is coming up. And it was, if you recall, kind of a quick interview, and that event is coming quickly. So I'm going to play that probably around 7:30-ish, right through there. Quickly, I'm saying a lot of quickly this morning. U.S. drone strike in Baghdad has killed an Iranian-backed militia commander. I wanted to pass that along to you if you had not seen that by now. A U.S. drone strike in Iraq's capital killed 3 members of that militia group on Wednesday night, including a high-ranking commander, is what officials are saying. Okay, I'm not going to say this is surprising, but as I kind of start dipping my toe in the water here to talk presidential information, Marianne Williamson dropped out of the presidential primary race. Self-help guru Marianne Williamson is suspending her second long shot campaign for the nomination. Now, the last time she ran, it seems like she got a little more traction. I mean, she was always a long shot, don't get me wrong, but during the debate, some people were really kind of fascinated about her different take on really politics in general. It was also very interesting to see, after she suspended her campaign, what she had to say. This is the last go-around. What she had to say about how the media treated her, that really it was conservative outlets that were friendly to her, and that it was her own party that really would trash her and get down in the mud and the dirt. The 71-year-old White House hopeful announced she was dropping out in a campaign email to supporters on Wednesday, one day after her third-place finish in the Nevada primary. Now, she lost. Biden came in first. Then any other candidate came in second. And then Marianne Williamson coming in third. This is what she said. First, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. Then you don't win. That's kind of funny. I appreciate greatly all the incredible people who accompanied me on our political journey over the last 10 months. While the level of our failure is obvious to all, a level of success is real nonetheless. So she was pretty crystal clear how things went. Just kind of interesting that Marianne Williamson was in it in the first place, not meaning that she just received no real media attention. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. receiving a lot more attention, and then he went independent. Marianne Williamson, I don't even know if he got as much attention as Phillips, whose name, he's so successful, his name I always forget. Now, there's quite a few, and you'll see it this morning, perhaps a little bit. Maybe you saw some last night, and more talk about the, maybe, how do I want to word this, the mental health decline of the president. But it's very interesting to me to see how the media covers it, because now that they're almost forced to cover it, it's gotten so bad. When he forgot, the most glaring recently is he forgot Hamas. And of course, a reporter, an unbiased, fair and balanced reporter, helped him along to give him the word he was looking for. But they have reported on a little bit. But what they did is they've highlighted he messed up 2 leaders' names. One using a name of someone that had been dead since 96. So, yeah, it's very glaring, pardon me, gaffes or whatever word you want to use. So very often they'll say gaffe or misspoke. But why I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, it is very interesting to see how they're trying to cover this, because what they'll say is Biden's had some, he's misspoke a little bit, had some errors lately, and so hasn't Trump. So I said, okay, well, let's see what they show. I did not see, this has been on numerous reports, I did not see the glaring Hamas issue, which it's scary if the president can't remember Hamas in a way, just when we talk about the real clear facts here. And then they go to Trump, and they had to go back, probably a month ago, when they believe that he mistook Nikki Haley for Nancy Pelosi in his speech talking about Nikki Haley, or talking about Nancy Pelosi when he meant to be talking about Nikki Haley. So now to, I guess, be able to justify it in their own minds, if they're going to talk about Biden and the real concern people have, they then have to, which they haven't done that previously for the last nearly 4 years. Now that they're forced to, now the coverage is, but also Trump. Now mental health for our president is a real concern for Trump as well. It's very interesting. It hasn't been for the last 3 years, but now it is. Well, why Biden is losing to Trump in the polls despite a booming economy, says Stephen Hayward at the New York Post. And he goes through and suggests that the economy, and again, the New York Post, more conservative, the economy isn't as bad as you're feeling. But he goes through and says, well, why? Okay, let's accept his premise. Why would Biden be losing? One of the reasons he gives is, even though consumer sentiment is trending positive, the number of Americans who tell pollsters the country's on the wrong track continues to clock in at more than 70%. This is likely because of social issues, says Hayward, especially crime and out-of-control immigration. These issues merged with the recent assault on New York City police officers, the one that we mentioned so frequently last week, by migrants who were released without bail. And we don't have to relitigate that. We remember that story. But third, there's an obvious elephant in the room. While elephants never forget, Biden can't remember much of anything. His mental and physical decline for a year or two is plain to, from a year or two ago, is plain to everyone to see. The polls show a majority of voters don't think Biden can complete a second term, so why give him one? That's Stephen Hayward at the New York Post. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about this, as he put it, the elephant in the room. I don't want to go too much into that, but I was shocked. I really was when, for the second time in a row, Biden turned down the opportunity to be interviewed before the Super Bowl. And the reason I say I was shocked is that is always softball questions. He would have received such kid gloves in that interview. Why not reach that just gigantic crowd? And you can say, well, I don't want that in my Super Bowl. I agree. I'm just saying he was given the opportunity. So why not take it? But we've got more to talk about. I don't want to run too late. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. A beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. You're watching Frankly Speaking. So I mentioned that this piece from the New York Post, and it's really what brought my attention to the whole issue of the president not speaking during the Super Bowl. But Joe Biden's mental decline cannot be ignored. This is from the Post editorial board. And I've got to say, I know I go to the New York Post a lot, but I have seen this on numerous news outlets because it started to really pique my interest, because obviously, clearly, during an election year, this is not something the media wants to bring up, and that's why they have to go, yeah, but what about that time Trump did this? You know, that's what you're going to see in the coverage. And the same would go, not necessarily for age, but the same would go, or mental health, for Nikki Haley. If Nikki Haley were to get it, it would be, well, Biden has this issue, sure, but Nikki Haley did this. I mean, they could tell us how Nikki Haley's our best option, and she would do great. She would destroy Biden. But you remember, we heard that about McCain. We heard that about Romney. And what do? The minute those men got the nomination, it was no holds bar, and the media went after them. Romney, well, McCain as well. Anyway, the president of the United States is not all there, they say. And I would love to have you weigh in on this, by the way. It's been obvious to many of us for a long time, but it's now grown impossible to ignore. And I would agree with them, because to have the mainstream media report on it, it's gotten that bad. Answering a question about hostage negotiations on Tuesday, a frail Biden was plainly confused and disoriented, mumbling and pausing, even unable to recall Hamas's name. And I'm not going to try to read out the quote, but a reporter finally had to help out and say, Hamas? And Biden grabbed on and said, yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas. Biden's been having senior moments since before he took office in 2021, and they're getting more frequently. They mentioned that he mixed up the French presidents, actually saying he met with the former president who died in 1996. He actually said yesterday there was a German chancellor who died in 2017. So they are becoming more frequent. On Sunday, jumping ahead, no wonder his staff obsessively keeps him out of the public eye. They just turned down his best chance to connect with the public in the entire election year, period. The traditional Super Bowl interview, answering softball questions in front of the biggest possible TV audience. And that is what's very interesting about that, because if you're going to make the assumption that he is going to run like he did in 2020, that it's going to be from the basement, that it's going to be very, very few, if any, debates. I doubt any debates, or it'll be few rallies, and really something that, and I know the people around him said, well, we had to do it from the basement. It was during COVID, but there was a different level, of course. And I would argue that we're already starting to see that, even though it's only February. And how bad is he, they ask, behind closed doors? The world has no idea, and probably won't until the tell-all memoirs come out once he's left office. It's deeply sad to watch, but also chilling. Dangerous for the nation, and a gift to our emboldened enemies around the world. Yeah, the point there being that if you can't remember one of our enemies, Hamas, that is emboldening. And I don't say this with any kind of happiness in my thoughts. This is sad to watch, as the Post says. Like this, beyond that, it's cruel to ignore rapidly declining mental health. When an older loved one exhibits this kind of behavior, the family starts talking about taking away the car keys and discussing in-home, round-the-clock supervision. Someone who loves or cares for the president must step up. Yet Democrats want to put him in the White House for a second term, with Harris, who's more verbally challenged without being 81, as his backup. It should be unthinkable, and it's risky. Even if Biden's handlers can avoid a truly disastrous incident, the lowlights reel is already sure to be brutal. Americans won't be fooled. And Miranda Devine kind of dives into a little bit more on this to piggyback. I do want to take a short break because we have another interview, though it's pre-recorded, that we played before, but that's coming up, and I don't want to run too late. But when it was disclosed that Biden turned down, I think this is for the second year, the Super Bowl interview, Trump went to social media saying on Truth Social, crooked Joe Biden has just announced that he will not be doing the big Super Bowl interview. A great decision. He can't put two sentences together. I would be happy, this is in all caps now at this point, I'd be happy to replace him. Ratings gold. No one turning in to watch football this Sunday. Oh, this is what the Biden's campaign manager responded with, I should say communications director, Michael Tyler. No one tuning in to watch football this Sunday wants to hear Donald Trump say a darn thing about anything. Now that's, as a communications director, I wouldn't say that's the most clear sentence or well thought out sentence. You can make the argument that the football fans don't want to see the interview with the president. Yes, I think that's a very good argument to be made there. But it's still somewhat of a tradition and a golden opportunity for the president to reach a gigantic audience with what is always softball questions. But it's a fair bet that more NFL fans are Trump voters than Biden voters, despite the league's best efforts to alienate conservative men. Above all, giving Trump his primetime slot would teach Biden a lesson. And this is why I like this piece by Miranda Devine. It's a lesson all self-respecting media should want to teach the president. He will get the message quick that if he leaves a vacuum, his opponents will fill it. And that being accountable for his actions is one of the most important responsibilities of a president. And we're going to take a break because I want to dive a little bit more into this, but I read somewhere where he hasn't given a one-on-one sit-down interview, and it might have been this piece, since October. I guess he did one kind of goofball kind of one with Conan O'Brien, but a real sit-down interview. Isn't that interesting? So we'll maybe talk a little bit more about this. I don't want to spend the whole show on this, and I don't want to spend the whole show just on presidential. We do have a couple of New York State issues, a little bit more about the backlash over the failed impeachment and the failed bills, the Republicans are kind of getting a lot of grief. We'll put it that way, getting a lot of grief for. So let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll have our guests, and then we'll be able to really dive in to a few more topics with some more length and time. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and joining me in that studio is Guthrie's Special Event and Annual Givings Officer, Nicole. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Everybody's talking about it, especially around here in Corning. Tell us about Guthrie Corning's Valentine's Ball.
We are so excited to have the Valentine's Ball again this year. It is Saturday, February 10th, and it is held at Corning Museum of Glass, which is such a great location. The Valentine's Ball is a fundraiser. It is the biggest and premier fundraiser for Corning Hospital and for the Corning Cancer Center specifically.
And we were talking out there, it's been 21 years?
Yes, this is the 21st annual. We're so excited to keep that tradition going and bring those funds into the Cancer Center that are so needed.
And I want to talk about the Cancer Center in just a moment, but it does seem like this has become kind of the social event of the year, hasn't it?
Yes, we're very excited. Tickets are wonderful. They're flying out the door, so if you're interested in coming, we encourage you to get your tickets soon.
And I'll get all that information in just a moment. But tell us about Guthrie's Corning Cancer Center.
The Cancer Center in Corning is a pretty special place. So over the years in doing the Valentine's Ball, we have been able to come in contact with some patients that have had experiences at the Cancer Center, and they're incredible. And their stories are incredible. I think the biggest thing that comes out of their story is they start very afraid. They come into the Cancer Center with a very scary diagnosis. And through their journey, they make a family out of the people that are there to take care of them, their nurses, their clinicians, right down to the folks that check them in when they come in the door. So that is a storyline that we see often and very heartwarming.
Well, and that's why I wanted to mention the reputation of the staff at Corning Cancer Center is just remarkable.
It is. It's kind, from bringing soup to patients to homemade blankets to just the kindness that people show and the strength when they can ring the bell and their treatments are over. It's a very special place.
Isn't that nice? How does the ball help support Guthrie Corning Cancer Center?
All the proceeds from the Valentine's Ball actually support the Guthrie Corning Cancer Center. Over the years, we have brought in a good amount of money for that Cancer Center and to support those patients and from all sorts of different things.
How can a business, or maybe myself, an individual, support this cause, the Corning Valentine's Ball?
We are excited. We have a lot of sponsorship opportunities at the ball. This is a sellout event, so there are a lot of folks there that are there to support the Cancer Center, and businesses get amazing recognition for their sponsorship. Plus, it's just for a great cause. So we're very excited to offer those. We have sponsorship levels all the way from $1,500 up to $10,000. So really, there's a level for anybody.
And I think the fact that you sell out the museum every year goes to speak to how much fun, how important this specific Valentine's Ball is.
It's great. I mean, people come in and they really feel the love. They see the impact. We share a wonderful video every year that really shows the impact of the Cancer Center, so they feel really good about their donations. They feel really good about sponsorships and ticket sales. And then they have great food and they get to dance to a great band, and it's a really, really good night.
It's coming up on February 10th. As you said, it will sell out, so get your tickets ahead of time. Is there anything else that people should know about?
If you're interested in tickets, you can visit our website at www.guthrie.org/Valentine's Ball. You'll find all your information there, and you can get your tickets and your sponsorships. Well,
thanks so much. I know you're going to have fun at the ball, so thanks for being on the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. I know it. This morning we've had so many guests. We're like Carson. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We received some messages from viewers during the break. Let's go to it. Now, we were talking, and we're going to get back into it, the questions that even the mainstream media are asking about the president's mental health, really having issues with names of leaders, foreign leaders. Quote, he's in politics so long, he can't remember who's who. Wow, let me try it again. He's in politics so long he can't remember who's who because he outlived them all. Next one. Be prepared as we get closer to the election for increasing bizarre news and behavior from the left as they get more and more desperate in their war against Trump. And that goes to my point of, I just find it interesting that for nearly 4 years, mental health was not talked about. Now that Biden's kind of forced the media's hand, they're also saying, but remember the time Trump did this. Remember that. So it's just interesting. And finally, I like this message a lot. People tuning into the Super Bowl want to see Taylor Swift, not hear a presidential candidate. So that, if you're just joining us, the president has turned down the offer to do an interview, a softball interview during the Super Bowl. So Trump went to Truth Social and said, I'll do it, essentially. And Miranda Devine was weighing in on it and talking about the fact that just, if nothing else, with that large of a crowd, he should be out there kind of like a State of the Union almost, to be accountable, to say what's going on. It is presidential malpractice to be so inaccessible, not just in this interview, but in general, the kind of the campaigning from the basement, especially when we are embroiled in 2 wars and our soldiers are dying in the Middle East. Has there ever been a president so remote from the people? This is the 2nd year in a row he's bailed on the Super Bowl. He can't say he's too busy. The presidential daily guidance issued by the White House is remarkably light on substance and heavy on lids, meaning that it's over at a certain point. He hasn't done a sit-down interview since October, and no, Conan O'Brien doesn't count. It's nuts to pass up a primetime opportunity to advance his agenda to millions of voters in an election year. No one is going to put a damper on the football by asking gotcha questions. That's it. It's going to be softball no matter what. As Miranda Devine highlights some of the questions he may get. Tell us again that Hunter did nothing wrong. How existential a threat is Trump? Is democracy at stake? What are you and Jill doing for Valentine's Day? And what flavor of ice cream do you like? And other than those first ones, that's not that inaccurate of what we can see. But just to wrap up this discussion, you can bet he won't participate in election debates either. Yeah, I've been saying that for a long time. I think the argument will be, or the talking point that they'll use is, we don't want to give Trump a platform. They would do the same, just so you're aware, that if Nikki Haley, when the smoke clears, ends up being the nominee, they would say the same thing. We don't want to give these radical beliefs a platform, because that's a very great talking point right now to the left, meaning that the platform is giving you an opportunity to hear your side of an opinion, or your side of a debate, I should say, because they don't like your side. So it's okay. It's basically a way to say censor. And you're going to see that when it comes to Trump rallies. They're going to say, we don't want to give him, meaning the mainstream media, him this platform because of what he says in there. So if they don't like it, it shouldn't be heard. Essentially, censorship. But you can bet that he won't participate in election debates either, meaning Biden. This week, he was asked his response to Trump challenging him to a debate. Biden said, quote, "If I were him, I'd want to debate me too." And as Miranda Devine says, that says it all. It really does, because that's not how you would word that, Mr. President. Now, interestingly enough, and I should have put that up on the screen. I apologize. That's a piece. You can find it for yourself at the New York Post. Also, coming up next, I think this is kind of interesting. Oh, that's the one that we talked about earlier. This coming from Gallup before we take another break. Democrats are losing ground with Black and Hispanic adults. Again, this is coming from a recent Gallup poll. The Democrat Party's wide lead over Republicans and Black Americans' party preferences has shrunk by nearly 20 points over the past 3 years. What's happened in the last 3 years? Oh, that's right, an election. And we've seen that from various commentators of what's being said, that many in the Black community feeling let down by the promises that Biden made, which is interesting to me because that's typically, I mean, Hillary Clinton did the same thing. Election year, going to certain organizations, giving speeches, giving the platitudes, and then just walking away and doing nothing until 4 years. So that's very interesting polling number there. Democrats leads among Hispanic adults and adults aged 18 to 29 have slid nearly as much, nearly 20 points, resulting in Democrats holding only a modest edge among both groups. Wow, a modest edge. I would not have expected that. But that goes. It's interesting because of the kind of the Trump phenomenon, how that's affected it. Because Mitt Romney, just the way he carried himself as well. But anyway, whereas Democrats were at parity with Republicans among men as recently as 2009 and among non-college educated adults as recently as 2019, they are now in the red with both groups. So, again, this is from Gallup. You can find it at Gallup's website because, boy, they go in depth. Now, as I always say, don't read too much in the polls, but the fact that they're kind of forced to admit this and probably how little you'll see it in the mainstream media. But, yeah, Democratic advantage at record lows among black and Hispanic adults. Education groups diverging more than ever by party. Young adults show lowest Democrat support since 2005. Wow. A very interesting number. So I wanted to pass that along to you so you are the most well-informed that you can quote that to your friends. How's that? We're going to take another short break and we're going to get away from this. I do want to, well, before I take the break, I'm willing to run long on this because I meant to mention this earlier. I kind of glanced over it quickly, but then our guest joined us. State Senator Brad, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Holman Siegel, filed an objection with the State Board of Elections on Tuesday. This is in New York State, over the placement of former President Trump on the Republican Party's ballot for the upcoming presidential primary. I find it too weird, too, that they do this in primary. So basically, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong here. No, I'm not wrong. There it is. That he is a Democrat, and he's saying that Trump shouldn't be on the Republican primary ballot. And then they wonder why so many people, whether they like Trump or not, are convinced of this attack on the former president, convinced of what Trump says, that they're trying to silence him. Now, we know the oral arguments begin today in the Supreme Court, which is going to be a very, very big factor moving into the election of what they decide. We're not going to have answers for you right away, but maybe we'll get a little better idea when those arguments start of what direction it's headed. But all of this just seems to me to play into the talking points of the former president. And I know I've said that numerous times on this program, but it could not work better in his favor in that sense of, because I heard him being quoted yet again the other day saying, they're trying to silence me because I won't let them silence you. I mean, and then we have a state senator here in New York, Brad Holman Siegel, filing an objection at the State Board of Elections over the placement, so Democrat state senator, over former President Trump on the Republican Party's ballot for the upcoming presidential primary. And the other talking point is whether they're that scared, right? We've seen the polling that we just talked about. We saw the article that said even though there's a booming economy, booming in quotes, Biden's still losing to Trump in many cases. The filing comes after Republican elections commissioners cleared the way for Trump to be on the ballot in the April 2nd presidential primary. Well, make no mistake, he's from Manhattan, Holman Siegel. He knows this is going to the Supreme Court. He knows this is not going to be decided any differently by the Board of Elections. This is for him to reach out to his base and say, look what I did. Knowing that it was not going to be successful, at least from anything he's done. It's not going to be successful, but he knows he can use it in the press releases he needs for fundraising and for his base. Now we are running real late. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The roof cam on a beautiful day here on Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you to everybody joining us. We have guests. We've had a lot of fun in our discussions, and we've been receiving a lot of back and forth from viewers, and I appreciate that. How about this one from our friend Ken in Horseheads? Everyone that is paying attention to the political world knows, 1, Biden makes no decisions. His handlers tell him what to say, and his wife and staff rehearse the script before he gets on camera. They can't let him do interviews that aren't rehearsed. Sure, and the behind the scenes of really making some of the decisions. So I think that's a good point. The second one, time will tell. I'll put it that way. Biden is a placeholder. When we get close to the election, he will back out due to health concerns. Then the real candidate will step in to save the day with very little vetting. The only, and I'm not knocking that opinion at all. I guess my only issue with that is, will they as a party be able to say it's not going to be Harris? They know that Harris would lose. So how do they save face and say, and I'm asking anybody that wants to answer this, how do they save face and say, well, it's not going to be Harris, it's going to be this person? Because I know some people have thrown around, Cindy Adams specifically with the New York Post keeps bringing it up, that it's going to be Michelle Obama, that she has signaled to private dinners and donors at these events that she wants to run. That's what Cindy Adams claims. If that's the case, she wouldn't be vetted anyway. I mean, she has nothing to vet on the political side of things. I mean, you can't run against any type of legislation she's passed, and the American public knew her for 8 years. So couldn't they do this already when it comes to vetting? I don't know. That just interesting that it's that time of year where in the campaign season where we'll start to hear more of what will happen, especially now. And I will say to that viewer's point that when you start to see the media cover the mental decline issue more, it does raise red flags as someone that pays attention to the mainstream media a lot, that what do they have up their sleeve? What does this mean? If they keep pushing this, what's the next step? What do the Democrats decide? Because it's not typical for the media to mention this. Okay. Anyway, how about this? I'm surprised by this piece from Politico as well. Politico, excuse me. Why New York's, did I get cut off just a little bit? Why New York's ambitious climate goals are drifting away. And you can find this on the Empire Report this morning, but it's also from Politico. Growing costs and canceled projects are putting New York's climate goals at risk. And one of the big discussions we've had here, whether it's with the Assemblyman, Phil Palmisano, or Assemblyman Chris Friend, or State Senator Tom O'Mara, we've always said the technology, the infrastructure is not there for their lofty goals. So like the Assemblyman said on the program last week, it's almost like tearing down a bridge before you already had a new one built. New York has long pushed to rely on 70% renewable electricity by 2030. It's clear now the state is no longer on track, derailed by growing costs, canceled projects, and regulators' refusal to provide more ratepayer-funded subsidies. Part of the problem is there are simply not enough existing, awarded, and contracted projects in the pipeline that hit that target in 2030. The biggest blow, 2 offshore wind contracts with the state's energy authority were terminated last week, taking a bite out of the state's inventory of investments set to be operational before the statutory deadline to reach 70% renewable electricity. State officials have recognized the challenges and highlighted the efforts to still achieve the targets in New York's historic 2019 climate law, which also includes a zero-emission electricity system by 2040 and an 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Well, I don't know how they'll change or how they'll adapt or if they're even willing to. But it was a pie-in-the-sky goal to begin with. It was kind of a utopian dream because we had a virtue signal in Albany, right? You had to have the supermajority in Albany say, we're going to do this before California, or we're going to make the same mistakes as California. That's really only our 2 options when they get into that virtue signaling mode, which is a lot. So that's... As far as I'm concerned, that was really the only part that could be reached, was to pat themselves on the back at the beginning. All right. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my time. But I thought that was interesting that Politico highlighted it. Oh, how about this? Quickly, I'm going to read some headlines before we go. The solution to New York's healthcare staffing crisis, and there is a huge staffing crisis in healthcare, new arrivals. This from USA Today. The reality is that immigrants are already the backbone of our healthcare system. About 58% of direct care workers in New York were born in another country. All right, there you go. Republicans in Congress, CNN loves to write these headlines, other outlets do as well. Republicans in Congress face internal backlash over dueling floor disasters. And I know there's numerous Republicans that are more than happy to give them a quote. And in some ways, I guess I can't blame them on this call. And final one, and I have no idea why I'm even bringing this up to you, but I saw it this morning, and I felt that I had to. PETA PETA has called on amusement ride manufacturers to stop selling animal-themed carousels. Yes, calling on the country's largest manufacturer of amusement rides to stop selling animal-themed carousels. Unintentionally, they celebrate the exploitation of animals that are thinking, feeling, affectionate, playful, and social beings. There we go. Thank you to our guest. Tomorrow on the program, Jim Griffin will tell us about an upcoming fundraiser for Boy Scouts, and we'll hear quickly from our good friend, Georgia Verdier. So make sure you tune in every weekday morning starting at 7 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone.